In the last video, we talked about how neural networks work and explored how forward propagation operates, while briefly touching the idea of backpropagation. In this video, we'll dive deeper on this idea and see how a neural network actually finds its parameters, the weights and the biases. In other words, we'll understand how the model is trained. But before diving into complex neural networks, let's understand this concept using a simple neural network. One with a single input, one hidden layer neuron, and one output neuron. Once we grasp how it works in this simple case, we will generalize the same idea for larger and more complex networks. Here, f is the activation function. First step is that we randomly initialize the values for the parameters w's and b's. Then, the model predicts an output by forward propagating through the network. Once the output is predicted, we compare it with the actual output from our dataset and calculate a loss. For this example, let's use squared error as our loss function. Now, our goal is to adjust these parameters, the weights and biases, so that the loss can be minimized. Now, we first need to update the weight and bias that are closest to the output node and then propagate backwards through the network. So, how do we update these? We use gradient descent. We take the current value of W2, subtract the learning rate alpha multiplied by the derivative of the loss with respect to W2, and assign this new value back to W2. We do the exact same thing for the bias B2. In simple terms, we are just nudging W2 and B2 step by step in the direction that reduces the loss. If this sounds confusing right now, it's probably because you are not yet familiar with gradient descent. I have already made a simple beginner-friendly video explaining gradient descent. You can check it out, and the link will be in the description. Now, the real challenge here is, how do we actually calculate these partial derivatives? This is where the chain rule from calculus comes into play. I won't be going into the full mathematics of chain rule in this video, but I will put some fantastic video links in the description that explain it really well. To do this, we will expand the loss function. Now, the issue is that we cannot directly differentiate the loss with respect to W2 because W2 does not appear directly in the loss. Instead, loss depends on y hat, which is the predicted output. So, this is exactly where the chain rule comes in. We first differentiate the loss with respect to y hat and then differentiate y hat with respect to W2. Now let's substitute value of y hat in terms of activation function. Even here, we still don't see W2 directly in the equation. So, we need to apply the chain rule once again. First, we differentiate with respect to Z2, which is the input to the activation function. Then, we differentiate Z2 with respect to W2. Next, when we expand Z2 into its weighted sum form, we finally get an expression where W2 explicitly appears. At this point, we can differentiate directly with respect to W2 to get our final result. Now, keep in mind the values of Z2 and y hat. What the chain rule tells us is this. If we change W2, it sets off a chain of changes. First, it changes Z2, then that changes y hat, and finally, that changes the loss. Our goal is to find a value for W2 that minimizes the loss. Now, if you differentiate the terms one by one, you will get this result for the partial derivative with respect to W2. The logic for the partial derivative with respect to B2 is almost the same. The only difference is that, in this case, the last derivative term is 1, since B2 appears directly in G2. Once the derivatives are calculated, we can plug them into the update equation to get the final values for W2 and B2. Let's highlight this update in purple in the animation, so it's clear and easy to follow. Now, let's move on to W1 and B1. The idea remains the same. We'll use the same update formula for these parameters. As we go further back in the network, the chain becomes longer because there are more layers involved. If you notice, some parts of the chain have already been calculated. We'll see later how to reuse these previously computed values to make the computation easier. If this seems confusing, try doing it using a pen and a paper. Things will become much easier. For now, just keep in mind this basic idea. We simply calculate the derivatives, plug them back into the update equation, and update the parameters. Then we repeat the same steps over and over until the loss is minimized. First, we predict the output by forward propagating through the network, and then we adjust the parameters by propagating backwards. Once the loss is minimized to an acceptable level, the algorithm stops and the network is trained. Now, for a more complex neural network, the core idea remains the same. First, we randomly initialize the parameters, then forward propagate to predict the output. And after that, everything is just a repetition of what we have already discussed. Let's see how that works. Here, A is simply the activation of neuron M in the layer L. We are using this notation A for better consistency throughout the explanation. Next, we start updating the parameters, beginning with the node closest to the output, which is the output neuron's bias and the weights connected to it. Keep in mind, in this example, we have only one output neuron, but there could be multiple output neurons in general. The core idea remains the same. We need to update those weights and biases. Here, the subscript on top represents the layer number, and J subscript represents the jth neuron in the previous layer, and 1 represents the output layer neuron, since in our example we have only one output neuron. For the bias term, there is only one bias, because there is only one node in the current layer, which is the output layer. Now, the partial derivative are found in a similar way, except here we are using the A notation. We can find this by differentiating as before. Now, let's go back and combine these two terms into one, the derivative of the loss with respect to Z4. This is equivalent as before, just compressing the chain. If this is confusing, remember that G4 is just the weighted sum plus bias of the current layer. Let's call this red highlighted term delta 4 and differentiate the other term. This will ease the computation for the previous layer, which you will see in a minute. Now, by setting j equals 1, 2, 3, we can get the updated parameters. Next, we need to update the biases for the previous layer and the weights connected to them. The idea is the same, only the notation changes. Here, the subscript I refers to the current layer's node number, and j refers to the node from the previous layer. For the bias term, it only has the I subscript, meaning it's the bias of the ith node in the current layer. Now, if we expand these partial derivatives using the chain rule, notice something interesting. This term right here is something we have already calculated. It's the delta 4 term. Now, if we differentiate it, it will look like this. And here is the key insight. If we write this expression in terms of delta, we can express delta 3 in terms of delta 4, something we have already computed. Then we can write the current partial derivatives of weights and biases using this new delta 3. Okay, that was a lot of math, and you might not grasp it all the first time. I highly recommend grabbing a pen and paper and going through all the chaining, substitutions, and differentiations. Doing this step by step will help you truly understand it. Now, this layer is done. Next, we need to update the parameters of the previous layer, and this step is interesting. Consider the first node in the layer. We need to figure out its contribution to the final output, right? But this node's activation does not just flow through one path. It branches out, affecting multiple nodes in the next layer, and each of those paths continues forward through the network. So, to update this correctly, we have to calculate its total contribution across all the possible paths leading to the output. And the same logic applies to every other node in this layer. The good thing is that the mathematics of the chain rule automatically takes care of this case. Now, let's look at the partial derivatives of the weights this time. I'm not showing the full expanded form, only the delta terms, along with the derivative of the weighted sum. Here is where things get a bit more interesting. When we apply the chain rule, we get a slightly different expression. This term right here represents the sum of contributions coming through all the nodes in the next layer. In our example, the value for k is 3 because there are 3 nodes in the next layer. So when we solve this, we end up with an expression for delta 2, which is written in terms of all 3 deltas from the third layer. From here, we can easily write the partial derivative terms for both the weights and the biases. For the bias, it's even simpler. The partial derivative is just the delta term itself. Now let's generalize this. To find any particular delta in the layer L, we calculate the sum of contributions from each neuron in the next layer by adding up the products of their delta values and their corresponding weights. Finally, we multiply this sum by the derivative of the activation function for the current neuron. And once we have the delta terms, it's no big deal to calculate the partial derivatives. We use these delta terms as cached values, so we can recursively calculate and store them for later use. This approach makes the computation much more efficient, avoiding the need to repeatedly perform the same expensive calculations. Now, the backpropagation continues all the way back to the input layer. When one forward and backward pass through the entire network is complete, we call it one epoch. We perform multiple epochs, repeating this same process until the loss is minimized to an acceptable level. Now that backpropagation is explained, I want to talk about the loss function. If we use the loss of just one training example per iteration, as we did earlier, it's called stochastic gradient descent. And if we use the loss over the entire dataset, it's called batch gradient descent. In practice, we rarely use either extreme. Instead, we use mini batch gradient descent, where we process small batches of data per iteration. These batches are usually chosen to be a power of 2, like 32, 64, 128, etc.